The Bible tells this story three times in three different settings: a throne room, a religious council room, and a courtroom. Different centuries, different men, same principle. Let's start with the king. David is king, powerful, respected, and decisive in all the land. If there was anyone who you wanted to preside over your case, that would be King David. We are told about a servant named Ziba who comes to David with an accusation against Mephibosheth. David listens to Ziba and completely believes it. He rules immediately, case closed. But years later, after the dust settles, David finally hears from the accused. Mephibosheth explains, "I was slandered. I never had a chance to speak." And suddenly, David realizes something devastating. Not only was his judgment off, even though he had never intended malice, the problem was speed. David's impulsive decision to act immediately. I believe Scripture leaves that moment unresolved on purpose to help us feel the weight of this truth. Even righteous authority becomes dangerous when it only ever hears one side. Now, fast forward, enter Nicodemus. Now, the religious leaders are angry at Jesus. The verdict is forming. And Nicodemus does something almost invisible but profoundly biblical. He asks one question in John chapter 7, verses 50 to 51. Nicodemus asked, "Does our law condemn anyone without first hearing him to find out what he is doing?" Nicodemus was referencing the Mosaic law in Deuteronomy 1:16 through 17, which says, "Hear cases between your brothers and judge righteously. You shall not show partiality in judgment." But the religious council ignores him. And the moment they reject that specific requirement of Mosaic law, they begin walking the same path David once stumbled onto, except this time, no correction ever comes. Injustice doesn't have to start with triggered hatred. Sometimes it can start with triggered impatience. Now, we move to the final scene, a Roman courtroom. Enter Paul, the apostle. Paul is accused repeatedly by religious leaders, by crowds, by rumors. But this time, something changes in the story. When Paul says, "Please, let me explain," the authorities actually do. And Roman officials end up saying again and again, "We find no basis for these charges." Why? Not because Paul suddenly became innocent, but because he was finally heard. False accusations collapse under scrutiny. But if that scrutiny never comes, the truth never arrives either. Now, the Mosaic law that was referenced by Nicodemus is from 1300 BC, more than 3,325 years ago. Under Mosaic law, you could not accuse someone anonymously. You had to stand before them. Your accusations had to be made known. You had to be questioned, and you risked punishment if you lied. But as history moved forward, there were times when that due process, that ancient due process of justice was denied. In the 1500s, for example, during the time of the Inquisition, the Roman Catholic Church investigated and prosecuted people accused of heresy. The Inquisition systematically destroyed justice through the practice of assuming things. Accusations were treated as all the proof anyone needed to get a judgment against another person, and people were given the right to accuse others in secret. The decision about whether you were guilty or not had already been made. That is the dangerous culture of injustice cultivated by social media today. Mosaic law said, bring the accuser and the accused face to face. Social media says, say it first, say it loud, say it fast. Nicodemus said, does our law condemn anyone without first hearing him? Our culture replies, but what if it's a pain to listen and complicate things? The danger is not just that injustice happens out there. The danger is that we participate directly in it. Every time we pass along an accusation without asking, who is speaking? Has the other side been heard? Am I helping truth or feeding speed? We are choosing the crowd over the court. The next time someone says, please do not listen to the person I'm accusing or make them aware of my accusations, you can say, well, we tried that during the Dark Ages and found out that taking a person's rights away like that was not a good idea. And if people set you up to think that way, they may be tampering with your ability to form good judgments. They may be using your own emotions against you to get what they want out of you. Remember, God never entrusted justice to a mob, not even one generated through social media. The algorithms reward people for rushing to judgments. Social media platforms are not made for patience. They are built for speed and engagement. The fastest story spreads. The angriest take rises. The most shocking accusations win all the attention. Listening does not go viral. Restraint is not rewarded by social media. Corrections arrive quietly, long after the damage is done. In other words, the system itself pushes us away from biblical justice. And yet, this is where Scripture presses us firmly but gently. A broken system does not remove our personal responsibility. Mosaic law did not say, don't tell the accused of the accusers or their accusations unless that choice would be very popular. It said, do not spread a false report. Exodus 23:1 says, you shall not spread a false report. Do not join the wicked by being a malicious witness. Now that command was given to all of us. The crowd does not exist apart from us. Algorithms do not act alone. Virality is built from millions of small choices. But Scripture never asked God's people to be fast. It asked them to be faithful. So the question is not only, is this trending? The question is this true? Not, how does this make me feel? But has the accused person heard the accusations and responded directly to them? Because God's justice has always worked the same way. Slow enough to listen, brave enough to wait, strong enough to stand up against the crowd. If we want to see where crowd-driven justice ultimately leads, we don't have to look at the history books. We only have to look to Jesus Christ. Christ's trial violated every safeguard of Mosaic law. He was arrested under the cover of night. He was tried quickly and as quietly as possible. He was brought before a council that had already decided the outcome before he even said one word. Any defense of Christ's actions was treated as blasphemy. His silence was interpreted as proof of his guilt, and when the religious leaders failed to secure a conviction, they turned to the crowd. Pilate, the ruler and judge who presided over Christ's trial, knew the truth. He said it plainly. I find no guilt in him. But the crowd was louder than the law. So Pilate did what unjust systems always do. He surrendered to the crowd. Crucify him, they screamed. Notice this. Jesus was not condemned because the evidence was strong. He was condemned because the crowd was louder than the court, and he was silenced. The first story had already won. The verdict was already trending, and the defense no longer mattered. This is the final warning Scripture gives us. When accusation replaces examination, when speed replaces discernment, when crowds replace courts, even the embodiment of truth himself can be executed. And yet, this is grace. Jesus did not answer violence with violence. He absorbed the injustice to expose it. Jesus Christ showed us exactly how fragile justice becomes in human hands when the crowd is loud.